hearts entwined. The velvet box slipped from Maya's trembling fingers, scattering tiny seed pearls across the workshop floor like teardrops made solid. She had been holding that box for 20 minutes, unable to open it, unable to breathe properly, because inside was the engagement ring her ex-boyfriend had commissioned 3 months ago before he'd discovered her truth, before he'd walked away with disgust carved into every line of his face, before Maya's entire world had shattered and reformed into something she was still learning to recognize. Now the ring sat abandoned on her workbench, a monument to the life she'd been trying to force herself into, while her hands ached to create something real, something that reflected the woman she'd finally admitted she was. The pearls rolled into corners of her studio, and Maya wondered if this was what freedom looked like. Beautiful things, scattered everywhere, waiting to be gathered into a new pattern entirely. Maya Chen had inherited her grandmother's jewelry business in Portland's Pearl District 6 months ago, and with it came a legacy of delicate craftsmanship and a client list that included some of the city's most prominent families. Her grandmother had taught her that jewelry was more than metal and stone. It was memory made tangible, love given form, promises wrapped around fingers and throats and wrists. Maya poured herself into her work with an intensity that worried her few close friends, spending 14-hour days at her bench, creating intricate pieces that won awards and commissions but never quite filled the hollow space inside her chest. She had recently ended her engagement to Trevor, a decision that had cost her not just a relationship, but her parents' approval, several friendships, and the comfortable fiction she'd been living for 27 years. Coming out had felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying, and necessary and irreversible. And now, Maya was learning to fly while everyone she'd known watched. Some cheering, most judging, all of them making her feel exposed in ways that took her breath away. The morning Alexis Reeves walked into Maya's studio. It was raining the way it only rains in Portland, steady, soft, relentless, turning the world outside into watercolor. Alexis entered like she owned every space she walked into, her presence filling the small studio with an energy that made Maya's hand still over the bracelet she'd been polishing. She was tall, with dark hair cut short in a way that accentuated the elegant line of her jaw, wearing a perfectly tailored blazer over jeans that somehow looked both casual and impossibly sophisticated. But it was her eyes that caught Maya, warm brown eyes that seemed to see everything, that looked at Maya with an attention that felt like being truly observed for the first time in her life. Alexis introduced herself as a wedding planner, one of the best in the Pacific Northwest, and explained that she was looking for a jeweler to partner with for her upcoming season of weddings. She needed someone who could create custom pieces, who understood that every love story was unique, who could translate emotion into metal and stone. As Alexis spoke about her work, her hands moved gracefully, painting pictures in the air, and Maya found herself mesmerized, not just by the business opportunity, but by this woman who talked about love with such fierce, unapologetic joy. They began working together on a wedding for 2. Brides who wanted matching cufflinks engraved with coordinates of where they'd first met. Maya spent hours getting the details perfect, and Alexis would stop by the studio to check progress, always staying longer than necessary, their conversations drifting from work to life, from the surface to something deeper. Maya learned that Alexis had been out since college, that she'd built her wedding planning business specifically to create celebrations for LGBTQ couples who'd been turned away by traditional vendors, that she'd survived her own heartbreak and emerged stronger and clearer about who she was. Alexis spoke about love like it was both the simplest and most complex thing in the world, something worth fighting for, something that required courage, something that looked different for everyone, and that was exactly how it should be. Maya found herself opening up in ways she hadn't with anyone, talking about the confusion of her 20s, the desperate attempts to make herself fit into a straight narrative, the relief and terror of finally admitting her truth. Alexis listened without judgment, without pity, with an understanding that made Maya feel less alone than she had in years. The shift from professional to personal happened gradually, like seasons changing, almost imperceptible until suddenly everything was different. Alexis started bringing coffee when she visited the studio, always remembering that Maya took hers with oat milk and honey. Maya began sketching jewelry ideas inspired by wedding themes Alexis described, creating pieces that weren't commissioned but felt necessary, pulled from some creative place that had awakened. They started meeting outside of work, dinner at a small Vietnamese restaurant in Southeast, a walk through the Japanese garden when the cherry blossoms were blooming, a late-night conversation on Maya's apartment balcony that stretched until dawn, painted the sky pink and gold. Maya felt herself falling, and it terrified her because this was so new, because she'd just destroyed one relationship and wasn't sure she knew how to build another, because loving Alexis felt huge and important in ways that made her previous engagement seem like a pale imitation of feeling. She tried to pull back, to create distance, to protect herself from potential hurt. But Alexis saw through every defense, met every retreat with patient presence, waited without pushing until Maya was ready to step forward. The breaking point came at a wedding. Alexis had planned for two women who'd been together for 15 years. Maya had created their rings, simple platinum bands with tiny diamonds set inside, visible only to the wearers, a secret sparkle against their skin. She attended the ceremony as Alexis's guest, standing in the back of the flower-filled venue, watching these two women promise forever to each other, with a sincerity that made Maya's throat tight. She watched Alexis orchestrate the day with seamless grace, solving problems before they became visible, creating magic from logistics, her face glowing with genuine happiness for the couple. During the reception, as the brides danced their first dance to a song that made half the guests cry, Alexis found Maya standing by the window, overlooking the Willamette River. She didn't say anything, just stood beside Maya, their shoulders touching, and Maya felt something inside her chest crack open. All the fear she'd been carrying, all the shame her parents had tried to instill, all the doubt about whether she was allowed to want. This, it suddenly seemed small, compared to the love filling this room, compared to the possibility standing right beside her. Maya turned to Alexis, and later she wouldn't remember deciding to speak, wouldn't remember choosing courage, would only remember the words leaving her mouth like they'd been waiting there all along. She told Alexis that she was falling in love with her, that it scared her senseless, that she didn't know how to do this, but she wanted to try, that Alexis made her feel seen in ways she'd never experienced, that being around her felt like coming home to a place Maya hadn't known existed. Alexis's eyes went bright with tears, and she laughed, the sound of pure joy, and pulled Maya close, right there by the window with the wedding celebration continuing around them. Their first kiss was soft and searching, tentative and sure all at once, and Maya felt her entire body come alive, felt something in her soul click into place, felt like she was finally kissing someone who matched her, who met her exactly where she was. When they pulled apart, Alexis whispered that she'd been waiting for Maya to catch up, that she'd known months ago but had been willing to wait forever if that's what Maya needed, that loving her was the easiest thing in the world. The months that followed weren't perfect because real life never is, but they were real in ways Maya had never experienced. She and Alexis built a relationship that felt like collaboration, two whole people choosing each other daily, supporting each other's dreams, creating space for both togetherness and independence. Maya's parents struggled with her relationship, and that hurt in ways that kept Maya up some nights. But Alexis held her through the grief, reminded her that she was allowed to mourn the acceptance she'd hoped for while building a family of choice that celebrated exactly who she was. Their businesses flourished together, Maya's jewelry becoming the sought-after choice for Alexis's couples, their combined aesthetic creating weddings that felt both timeless and revolutionary. Maya started designing a line of engagement and wedding rings, specifically for LGBTQ couples, pieces that challenged traditional gender norms, that celebrated love in all its forms, and watching people's faces light up when they saw themselves reflected in her designs healed something in Maya she hadn't known was broken. On their 1-year anniversary, Alexis took Maya to the coast, to a small cabin overlooking the Pacific, where waves crashed against ancient rocks and the air tasted like salt and possibility. They spent the weekend cooking together, walking the beach collecting sea glass, talking about the future in concrete terms, moving in together, maybe getting a dog, eventually planning their own wedding when they were ready. On their last evening, as the sun set fire to the ocean, turning everything gold and orange and impossibly beautiful, Alexis pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring Maya had never seen, delicate, rose gold with a small opal that caught the fading light and threw rainbows across Alexis's palm. Alexis explained that she'd had it, custom made by another jeweler, because she wanted to give Maya something she hadn't created herself, wanted to surprise her completely. It wasn't an engagement ring, not yet, but a promise ring, a commitment to keep choosing each other, to keep building this love, to keep creating a life together that honored both of them fully. Maya slipped it on her finger and felt the weight of it, solid and sure, and understood that this was what she'd been searching for all along. Not just love, but love that let her be completely herself, love that asked for truth instead of performance, love that felt like freedom instead of cage. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if you felt the courage it takes to live authentically, or if you believe in love that transforms and heals, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who might be struggling to find their own path, who need to know they're not alone, who deserve to see love stories that reflect their reality. Sometimes a simple gesture, a like, a share, a comment, can be the encouragement. Someone needs to take their own brave step toward authenticity. Maya's grandmother's jewelry shop became something new under her care. Not just a business, but a sanctuary where people came to mark their most authentic moments, with beauty that reflected their truth. She and Alexis built a life that honored both their professional dreams and their personal love, creating a home filled with plants and art and the kind of laughter that comes from really knowing someone. Some of Maya's family eventually came around, slowly, awkwardly, but with genuine effort, and Maya learned to accept imperfect reconciliation as its own form of grace. Other relationships remained broken, and she grieved them, but she no longer mistook that loss for a reflection of her worth. The jewelry she created became more innovative, more daring, as if her personal freedom had unlocked creative possibilities she'd been too afraid to explore before. Alexis continued planning weddings that celebrated love in all its forms, and together they became known as the team that understood what it meant to honor authentic commitment. Before we reach the end, if this story resonated with you, please take a moment to leave a comment below, sharing what love means to you, or simply write "Love is love" if these words touched your heart. 2 years after that first meeting in Maya's studio, on a spring evening when the cherry blossoms were falling like pink snow, Maya and Alexis had their own wedding, small and perfect, surrounded by people who celebrated them unconditionally. Maya wore a custom suit she'd designed herself, and Alexis wore a dress that made her look like some kind of goddess. And they exchanged rings Maya had created, bands engraved with words only they would see. "You found me and I choose you." As they kissed for the first time as wives, Maya thought about that day when the pearls scattered across her workshop floor, when her old life had broken open to make room for this new one. She thought about all the small courages that had led to this moment, all the times she'd chosen truth over comfort, authenticity over approval. She held Alexis's hand and felt the weight of their matching rings and understood that this was what her grandmother had meant all along. Jewelry was memory made tangible, love given form, promises that wrapped around you and held you safe. Maya had finally created the most beautiful thing she'd ever made, a life that was completely, courageously, radiantly her own.